Let's see if we can get Nikki's here. All right, well, what I promised you tonight was a little bit about how I started the public speaking masterclass, giving you a little bit of history behind it, and then the methodology by which I teach when I host the class, which is kicking off next week. So I have been for the last 20 years, and Arthur, you already know this, a television
Yeah.
anchor here in New York
Yes.
City.
Yes.
I've covered the financial markets from the floor of the New York Stock Exchange for 20 years. And I think the biggest thing that I learned from that experience was that I learned how to speak off the cuff without any notes or any kind of prompter. And I also learned how to like really distill things down to the very basics. So whether I was speaking to a very sophisticated crowd or whether I was speaking to a very consumer-faced crowd, I always knew who my audience was and I could quickly toggle the amount of information I was throwing at that person as a result of it. Now, I've been hosting Lady Drinks, the platform, for the last 8 years. And in the last year, as more people like yourself, Arthi, are doing either videos for their business, or they're pitching to more clients, or they're trying to just get more team buy-in from whoever it is that they are working with, more and more people have been coming to me saying, Joya, could you coach me one-on-one? I'm totally fine with doing one-on-one coaching with people and doing a bespoke session that's like tailored to you and your goals. But then people started asking me, oh, can you host a masterclass? A, because they thought that the one-on-one coaching wasn't as accessible when it came from a cost perspective. And B, they also liked the idea of being able to practice in front of other people.
Yeah.
So I went and took a class to develop this master class. And now I've taught it a couple of times. And the thing that has struck me the most is not necessarily people with their elocution or their diction or their delivery. It's more in the way that they organize their content, or in the case of you, Arthi, having the language kind of tucked away in your back pocket that you can use when you feel like you're getting railroaded.
Yes.
And I'll give you an example. So oftentimes if I'm explaining something and I talk really, really fast, and I know I can read the room, I can see that the person across the table from me isn't understanding what I'm saying, and they say as much, I'll say, I'm sorry, I'm actually not communicating clearly. So let me start again. Like I'll take the onus on me. Hi, Sashala, nice to see you. And so that's an example of just having language that I've learned by observing other people, where I can pull that out and say, you know what, it's on me. I'm not communicating clearly, so let me start
Okay.
again. Another thing is when people are cutting you off or they're not letting you finish your story. And I'm sure that happens to you quite a bit.
Yeah, a lot.
It's like, I'm not finished. If I may finish, following up on that. Those are pieces of language that you can have tucked away and saying, I would really love to finish what I'm saying. I'm sure everybody in this room is going to get a chance to talk.
Okay.
So I think that those are things that I've learned over time in watching other people, watching other commentators, watching other anchors, watching other people in business meetings, is a way to not get railroaded and to get that level of assertiveness that you're looking for. The other thing that you can do is the art of reciprocity. A lot of times, and Sashala, I think you and I may have talked about this, when you give somebody something, they feel obligated to return the favor. So if you can give somebody something, let's say Arthi, it's one of your employees, I don't know, maybe it's, a piece of candy, or maybe it's, half a day off, something that they weren't expecting. Now all of a sudden they feel obligated to give it back to you. And that kind of flips the power dynamic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Michelle, I'd love for you to introduce yourself to everybody in this room right now. And I know you moved from New York to the West Coast. I want to
Yeah.
hear about how the job is going.
Yeah. So, hi everyone. My name is Tashala Lamont. I work in the financial industry. I've been in the industry for more than 20 years. Found myself with the revenue generators in the front office. Worked as a global business manager on the controls end, and in between time, I've also worked in diversity and inclusion, and recently decided to pursue my passion about a year ago. And I've been doing D&I full time, moved from the East Coast to the West Coast to the Bay Area 3 months before pandemic. So I'm still trying to get used to the area, believe it or not, a year later. So, just happy to be here with Joya and the rest of you ladies. So yeah.
And so, Shala, could you share with Arti? Arti runs a home healthcare business in New Jersey. She's located in Ridgewood. And she was saying that one of the things that she struggles with is assertiveness with her employees and not getting, steamrolled sometimes when she's talking and other people trounce on what she has to say. So what would you say is your biggest challenge when it comes to public speaking?
Public speaking for me. So Artie, actually, thanks for sharing that, right? And I can almost imagine that it's even tougher during pandemic simply because, we're, exuding a lot of empathy during this season, right? So it's like, assertive and empathetic and kind of like trading those fine lines simply because of everything going on. So I empathize with you on that. But Joya, you had some great tips. For me with public speaking, I would have to say filler words. I love those filler words. It makes me feel good. I don't feel comfortable all the time doing that necessary pause without saying the so's and the likes. So even for myself personally, whenever I'm going up and I have to do like a big presentation or do a speech in front of, I don't know, audience of like 100 or 200 people, I'm getting a speaking coach. As much as I feel like, okay, I'm a good speaker, I still need a speaking coach because I know that I have those flaws that I'm very comfortable with, which I shouldn't be, but I feel like I need a coach up until 4 to 6 weeks before I do that big speech. So I'm always looking at ways to improve my public speaking because I know that I have to do better.
Well, one thing that I always teach in the class, and I'm happy to share that with you all tonight, is that leveraging the power of the pause and resisting the temptation to fill it with filler words comes with practice, and it comes with confidence.
Yes.
The fact that you want to take a moment to gather your thoughts before you move on. The one thing to remember is that psychologically, your brain is moving a hell of a lot faster than you are speaking. And so while 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds go by, it feels like an eternity in your head. But for your audience, it galvanizes them because they're like, wow, this person just went quiet. What's going on? The other thing is that it doesn't actually feel like an eternity for them. So the tendency to want to fill in filler words is really just a byproduct of you being nervous, right? That you're not comfortable with the silence. And most human beings are not comfortable with the silence. But if you yourself can start to become comfortable with it, it's actually something that arrests the audience and gets their attention. And it's also important to let things land. Right? So sometimes when I was teaching one person who was senior product manager at PayPal, and she, like Arti, really needed to get team buy-in, but because she spoke so fast and was always running at 100 miles an hour with filler words, you never could really follow the line of reasoning that she was presenting. So I was like, I'm going to get into the meat of like what I teach, but can you let things land? Slow it way down. And when you want to emphasize something, let that land.
Got it.
And it was something that she worked on. And by the end of our 6 sessions together, she had used that technique and delivered a speech to 200 people in her company, and it actually worked. But it's something that came from practice. And that's what's going to happen in the class is that each week you get a prompt. Maybe it's coffee. Maybe it's a concept that you find, Prema, that you're constantly having to explain to clients. But you have to be able to tell me that in the form of a story. And what does that mean? You have to start with a very compelling beginning. I am promising you that I'm going to share with you tonight how to become a better public speaker. The middle part is a story. And that is a personal story. And the reason why I say it needs to be a personal story is that there are no news stories in this world. Nithi, I know that you're a jeweler. There are a million jewelers in the world. But the fact that you come to the table with a different lens on how you sell and make your jewelry is what's unique to you. And so that's why it's so important to follow up and buttress that first statement that you offered. My promise to you is that I'm going to do X. Tell me a story that supports that. And at the end, you need to leave the audience with a compelling takeaway. Now, most people think that their takeaway has to be the same as their beginning, but the takeaway is actually the gift that you are giving to your audience for them to take away and marinate on. So tonight, for example, if I said to you that Amazon, when anybody in the way of a stakeholder presents an idea, I want to build a Kindle, I want to take over Whole Foods, I want to build a Fire phone, They have to create a 6-page memo and then present that in the form of a narrative to everybody in the room as to what is the problem, why are they the ones to solve it, and why is this the best solution for it. So it's not just me that's teaching this. This is actually a practice that is espoused by some of the major companies in the world. They teach their leadership to talk in the form of stories. So Sashala, that would be one thing that if you chose to go on with the class, I would work on with you to make sure that you learn to leverage the power of the pause, because the tendency is to put filler words in, but it's really a byproduct of your nervousness.
Got it.
Prema, if you could introduce yourself to everyone here and tell us, what are your public speaking challenges?
Hi, everyone. It's good to be in this forum, and I'm really excited to learn a lot of tips through this engagement. So I'm a business and immigration attorney. I work for a law firm called Chugg. I work out of its New Jersey and New York offices. My challenge with public speaking most often is assertiveness and nervousness. It's a combination of two. And I feel like if I'm not consciously thinking about it, I might be invisible. So I have to constantly keep reminding myself that you have to be more assertive to be visible.
Right.
And especially in my profession, it becomes important to do that because you have to say the right thing and give the right advice. So by nature, I'm not someone who is loud or who likes to get in people's faces, but at the same time, I have to make a point. So that's where my challenge lies.
So I think the important thing to distinguish here, and Arti, we were talking about this before everybody got online, is the difference between assertiveness and aggressiveness.
Right.
So assertiveness is when both parties walk away from the table with their dignity intact. At no juncture in time, even though you are asserting yourself and you're speaking up, you're never disrespecting the other person. When you become aggressive, it's not about we, it's about what's in it for me. And so I think that distinction is important. So I think one of the other things that I teach in class is how can you be assertive with grace?
Mm-hmm.
One of the big things that people have challenges with, and Arti, we were talking about this with your employees, when you're trying to break into a conversation, and for argument's sake, let's say we're probably trying to break into conversations where there are men in the room. Following up on that, or that reminds me of, or I would like to repeat what I understood. So these are phrases that you can have tucked away in your back pocket and you can unleash, but you have to make sure that you use it at a time, and you have to be comfortable enough saying it a couple of times, especially if nobody seems to be hearing you the first time around. But for me, I've found that when I'm in a group situation and I'm being drowned out, it's important for me to say, following up on that, that reminds me of, or I would like to summate what I'm understanding from what you're saying. And that gives whoever's talking an opportunity to course correct in real time, because maybe you aren't the only one in the room that didn't understand what the person was saying, but it also gives you a chance, an entry point. Sonali, I would love for you to introduce yourself to everybody. Sonali Pai, I realize there's more than one Sonali here.
Oh, really? Hi, my name is Sonali Pai. I live in New Jersey, known Joya for quite some time now, so happy to be joining. So a little bit about myself. I'm kind of, let's just say, transitioning to different roles. I had an education company, community-based, about for the past 3 years, and then I decided to sunset it in the middle of the year due to COVID. So during the time, for the past year and a half, I have been consulting with a hair coloring company and essentially running all of their marketing. So it's been interesting. My background kind of jumps all over the place. So when it comes to public speaking, for me specifically, which is a problem for me personally as well, is that I'm not prepared enough. And when I don't prepare enough, I don't feel confident enough. So it automatically shows, right? So I think kind of having that kind of cadence of preparation to avoid lack of confidence is really important, for me at least.
And I think, and some of you joined as this thing was going on, but I've now taught several rounds of the public speaking masterclass, and the diction and the elocution isn't always necessarily everybody's challenge. What has actually struck me is that people's challenges actually lie in organizing the information. So going back to, here's the beginning of the story, this is what I promised you. Here is the middle of the story. Following up on that, I'm telling you the only story, one message that buttresses what I promised you, and then the takeaway, which is the takeaway from the audience. And what I usually ask my students to do is start with the takeaway. So if your talk today is about hair color from Italy, if I remember correctly, what is the value proposition of getting any hair color product from Italy versus the slew of other people that are on the market? That is what I would like to leave the audience with. Right? So that would be your takeaway, whatever that might be. And then we reverse engineer from there. I know there's a whole story of how you decided that you were going to buy this Italian hair color company and take that to market in the US. So telling that story of how you found it and why you thought it was, there was a pain point that you wanted to fill. And at the very beginning of your story is, I bought a new business. I want to tell you about it. So what I teach is that you keep it very simple, one message, one storyline, and take me through it. And the other piece that makes you more memorable to your audience, and this of course has to be context specific, but it's the more emotional of a story you tell, the easier it's going to be for you to tell it, and the more memorable you are going to be for your audience. We as human beings have 3 different brains. And Prema, I'm sure when you're sharing statistics or you're just sharing pedagogic, you're teaching, that usually only engages 2 brains. But if you think about how we were as human beings in the early days, what we did was we sat around and we shared information around a campfire. That was our only means of being able to tell information, share information, and have it move on through the ages. So today, even now, if you tell a compelling story, you are able to engage all 3 brains to be a more compelling speaker. So Arti, when you're trying to get buy-in, or Sashala, when you're trying to engage an audience of 100, what can you do to bring in a personal story that's easier for you to tell and makes you more memorable to your audience? And I guarantee that it's going to be easier for you to tell it because it's your story. Sonali, I feel like you have something to say about that.
No, I completely agree. I think I probably wait a little bit too long to get to that emotional aspect of it. And I think that's important because then people remember.
Yeah.
But again, I think that comes from the lack of preparation. So kind of having the correct framework to make sure you prepare in a way that gets you to where you need to go is key, at least for me.
Yeah. And so that's what's going to happen every single class is I'm going to give you a prompt. You come to class prepared to deliver a 2 to 3 minute talk following this framework that I shared. Everybody in the group gives you feedback because that's how they learn. And then I give you feedback one-on-one, not only in the class, but also on the via email afterwards. Devanshi, why don't you introduce yourself? I believe you're in Westchester, right?
I know I'm in New York. Sorry, my connection is a little unstable. I keep going in and out. But hi, my name is Devanshi Shah, and I'm from New York, and I'm an interior designer. My main thing with public speaking is I think when it comes to, when I'm not prepared, when it's impromptu, it's like, it's totally like, I just don't know what to say. So it's like a blank face for me. I want to really improve on the impromptu way of speaking. And, when you're just also like, I'm constantly in touch with clients. And sometimes when clients are unhappy, I want to learn to talk to them in a way that would kind of calm them down, to ease their anger. It's such a field in interior design that things always go wrong. It's never a perfect solution. It's never a perfect, smooth sailing project. So there's always something with the contractor, with the client, there's always with deliveries, there's always something going on. So, I just want to kind of learn how to deal with impromptu situations.
Sure. So let me break that down into two things, the difficult clients and then the impromptu situations. So one of the things that we're going to be talking about, as I was saying, is that you're going to be practicing in front of everybody here. It's going to be something that you prepared beforehand. But then also, I'm going to be bringing in speakers at the top of each class. And one of the guest speakers for the top of the class is going to talk about tackling tough conversations. And Rebecca Maxwell has spoken several times. But one of the things that she would share, and Arti, I bet this applies to you as well, when you're in a situation where it's heated, how can you make sure that you keep all of the conversation focused on the facts, not on the you, not on the behavior, but just on the facts? The other thing is that you got to think about where you're going to have the conversation, when you're going to have the conversation, and what time you're going to have the conversation. Some of those things can be just as important as the words that come out of your mouth. And then the final piece that she will share, especially when someone's really getting heated, is to actively listen and then repeat back either the last 3 words that they said or any 3 words that they said, because the biggest thing that somebody wants is to be heard. And so this actually is from one of our other speakers, like repeating back what somebody has said to you is sometimes the best way that to kind of get somebody off their haunches because they feel like they've been hurt. But in terms of speaking impromptu, can you give me an example of when you were speaking impromptu last?
I guess like a lot of gatherings, like, how, I mean, we haven't had many gatherings of late, but when you're just with a group of friends also, or when you're just with, say, for example, one of your events, so that impromptu, I mean, I'm not prepared for you because I'm not really speaking. So just kind of, getting, I guess to be more clear, I think I am clear of what I do, but just to put that into words, I think it's more about,
But how can you talk about the latest book that you read? How can you talk about the latest trip that you took? How could you talk about the latest house that you designed? What was interesting about that house? Can you walk into a room having 3 pieces of conversation that you are ready to engage somebody on, right? And again, I think it's easier to talk about something that's personal to you than it ever is to talk about something you know nothing about. Right. So sometimes speaking impromptu is about having enough material stowed away in your head. And I know Sonali is a prolific reader, but for me, I read prolifically because I want to be able to establish common ground right off the bat when I meet somebody. And I like being a bit of a generalist and knowing a little bit about something so I can immediately establish that comfort level with the person that's sitting across from me. Because when it's something that I've learned from my broadcasting days, I would often have just the commercial break with the CEO before the camera would turn on. And I only had those few minutes to find out, is this person a talker? Is this person going to give me 1-word answers? Is this person going to warm up to me? So I had only a few minutes to establish that common ground. So for me, reading prolifically is something that really helped my ability to establish that right off the bat. Because people like to find their tribe. That's another thing. People like to find other people that are like them. And so if you can find what that, oh my God, me too moment, then that's going to help you to ingratiate yourself into anybody and to also just initiate any kind of small talk. Sue, welcome. It's good to see you. Why don't you introduce yourself to everyone here? Or Niti. She is. Hi, Sue. You've been gone so long.
So, yeah, I haven't seen you guys for a long time, and I was just so distracted by what's going on today. So I'm Sue Bhattacharya. I'm a project manager at Merck, and I was actually following the events that happened today, and it just amazes me like how one person can influence so many people to do the wrong thing. So I was just wondering, like this guy must have some magic charisma to influence people through his speech to do something which, any person would think is wrong. So sorry, I'm just distracted by what's going on with the news today. So that's the thought that popped to my mind.
Well, so Devanshi and I were just talking about this. People generally, as human beings, we're wired to find people that are like our tribe. And this is something that's been brought up again and again and again in the hiring workforce, right? That white men hire other white men because they golf with them, they vacation with them, they went to college with them, they were in fraternities with them. That's who they know how to talk to. And so now with us entering the workforce and becoming business owners like Devanshi and Sonali and Prema and Arti, so it's important for us to be able to start to assert ourselves as well. But the way that you do that is you have to establish common ground, and you've got to be able to figure out that likability factor, like, oh my God, me too, right? But for me, my solution for that is that I love to read prolifically. I love to read a lot. But the other thing is that, to answer your question about this person today, people want to be led. People just generally want to be led. And he probably found a pain point that he could poke at each of the people, right? And he was able to galvanize that to be able to get them to do what he did today on Capitol Hill. But none of us need to be activists to that extent. But what can you do, again, to establish common ground with your audience? The one thing I like to do before I speak in front of a live audience is I will go up to each person individually. I always get there 30 minutes to an hour early, and I'll go around and I'll shake hands. Arti, how are you? What part of the country are you in? Sashala, I know you're on the West Coast. Tell me what you do. And that way, when I've gotten up in front of the crowd, it's not a sea of strangers. I'm talking to people that I've already established a rapport with, and I've already figured out, like, Arti's got a pain point about assertiveness. Sashala wants to get rid of her filler words. Prema also wants to have assertiveness. Sonali really wants to be able to speak impromptu. Devanshi wants to speak impromptu. I now know because I've taken the time to connect with each single person and spoken to their pain point, that thing that thorn that is in their side. What is your biggest public speaking challenge right now, Sue? I know that you head up a team.
Yes, I do work with virtual teams because my job is to outsource the assays that support our clinical trials. So I support our clinical trials that not only within the US, but globally. So I interact with teams that are based in the US, in Canada, in Europe, and in China. So communication is a big in order to get the deliverables met in a diplomatic way, but that the timelines are met, and the communication style in each region is very different. And so over the years, I've been doing project management for about 6 years now. I crafted my leadership style based on a lot of things, and communication is one thing, and understanding the culture, and what Joya just mentioned, like what is that one factor that, if you could push, not push the buttons, I wouldn't put it that way, but what things could you hit on to make sure that this person will deliver this thing for you?
Because it's, to speak to Arti's point and Prema's point, you want buy-in. How are you going to get that buy-in if you haven't spoken to the pain point that person is currently feeling?
Right. And another thing is we constantly evaluate our vendors that provide the services to Merck, whether it's running assays or developing and validating assays or providing a service. When we go and do our due diligence and meet the key people, another skill that we've learned to develop is read into, what stands out, from a certain vendor. Like, are they able to deliver the job and also a good quality service? So those are things I also learned to read over the years. And the way I've done it is, interacting with people who have a lot of experience and joining, the teams where we have very experienced colleagues and see, what kind of things they look out for. And I would say, like, over the past 6 years, I've kind of developed that skill, and I've been successful in identifying vendors for Merck over the past few years. And but it's still a work in progress, and I learn each and every day. So yeah.
Thank you. Niti, I know you said that your connection was a little bit unstable, but would you like to share who you are and what you do?
Hi, Joya. Hi, everyone. Sorry about that. My connection was really unstable today. I hope it's going to work now. My name is Niti Agarwal, and I run a jewelry company known as Tinted Teal. I design and curate jewelry pieces, very individual looking, one-of-a-kind statement jewelry pieces that work well with the Indian attire as well as the Western ones. Speaking of public speaking, I think the biggest problem I used to face so far was my nerves getting on me and I would forget my content, what I had to say, or just about everything. In the recent past, I think I've started to practice a little bit of my content that I'm going to speak. Just know, an outline of what I need to speak, and remember my bullet points as to how I'm going to navigate through my speaking. And that has helped me a lot. And just practicing a little bit, a day or two in advance, impromptu, definitely nothing from a script, helps me get that nerve down and, not feel the fear and the nervousness of just doing it for the first time.
So one of the things that we also learn in class is that it's important to not only have your bullet points that you're going to say, but make sure you have them at eye level. Too many times you see people who are talking, but they're looking down the whole time and they're not connecting with your audience. And eye contact is probably the only modality, like Devanshi, when you're doing your videos, your eye contact is probably the most important way that you are able to connect with your audience that can't respond back to you in real time. Right. So whether you're doing videos, Nithya, I'm not sure if that's what you're doing or if you're presenting to an audience, making sure that your eye line is always in line with where the webcam is, not where the person is looking, is the most important thing, because that makes the person feel like Bill Clinton, for example, was always called somebody who was very charismatic. And the reason that he was charismatic is that he would keep his gaze totally trained on you and make you feel like you were the only person in the room. How many times have you been in a networking situation where a person's talking to you, but they're looking around because they want to see who else they can talk to? It's so disrespectful. But if you could keep your gaze completely trained on who you want to talk about. And then the second half, and I was sharing this earlier with Sonali as well as Prema, if you can tell a story that is personal to you, chances are you're not going to let the nerves get the best of you because it's your story. And the more emotional, and this is something that we work on in class, how can you embody each of the characters in that story to make it a more emotional one? Now, obviously, this is context dependent. Prema, if she's defending somebody in an immigration case, that may or may not be appropriate. But this is something that to think about when you're talking about your jewelry line and you're like, I curated this piece because it reminded me of a time that I was with my mother in Varanasi. And this is the story that I want to tell you, right? So it's making sure that you're making it very personal to you, but you're still buttressing what you promised at the outset, is that I'm going to tell you about this piece of jewelry that I curated from the north of India.
Right.
Makes sense?
Thank
you. Anne, would you like to introduce yourself? Okay, we've lost Anne.
I wanted to say, Joya, that when in law school, we were trained because of the nerves and how to keep focus on what you have to say. We had this formula called IRAC, which was issue, rule, application, and conclusion. Mm-hmm. Every, let's say I have to speak about something, that is like a thought process that, okay, what's the issue? What are you trying to say? What's the rule in legal language? But here you're like, okay, what's the scope you're talking about, application, and what is it that you want to leave people a message about?
Right. So it's exactly the same thing, right? It's kind of problem, solution, why am I the one to solve it? Or beginning, middle, and end. Sonali, I'd love to call on you. If the perfect sort of solution were to come down and offer you, a genie were to pop down and give you the perfect solution to your public speaking challenges, what would that look like? Hi, Sonali.
Hi. Oh my God, can you just repeat that really quickly?
No, I was asking, sorry, because I said there was two Sonalis on this call. I'm asking Sonali Pai. I'll get back to you.
Oh, thank God. Okay.
Sonali Pai.
I think a true solution would be someone else doing it for me. I think that would be the best solution, or truly having the time or to focus. See, again, for me, preparedness is probably my issue, but I think that also comes from confidence and kind of working in an industry that's somewhat new to me. The business aspect of it isn't, but the actual chemical aspect of the professional hairline is new. And when you're working with stylists or salon owners or distributors that have 15, 20 years of experience, and they can say, well, if you don't do the formulation like this, the hair can come out, blah, 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 blah. So learning that technical aspect of it for me, I think will provide me that ability to get more confidence. So I think that's something that I probably it's a skill set that I need to focus on specifically.
And I also like to
Outs-
teach something called the spokes method. So if I walk into a conversation and let's say I'm speaking to Devanshi about lighting, I may not know very much about lighting, but the spokes method is when you ask questions around the central topic. So Devanshi, I noticed that you have these articulating lights that are sitting to the left of you. How did you decide that that was the kind of lighting that you wanted to have in your living room? That's so interesting. What made you decide that you wanted to go into interior design? What is your favorite thing about interior design? I'm just curious, what is your exit strategy? Do you plan on doing this the rest of your life? You know, how can you ask questions around the topic, even if you don't know enough about the topic?
Right. Yeah. I think for me, that would be key. And, little by little, we're learning, or I'm learning and focusing on that. But I think, that does help you feel more confident when you know the technical aspect. But yeah, reframing in a question versus acting like an authority is an interesting, is a good take.
Yeah, and so I'll bring in a speaker to talk about the spokes method and how that helps you when you're in a situation where you're out of your depth. All right, Sonali, the other Sonali, would you like to introduce yourself to everyone here and let everybody know what your public speaking challenge is?
Hi, everyone. So I'm a sports medicine physician, and I focus on non-surgical orthopedics and regenerative medicine in New York City. And I'm in private practice, and I teach part-time at Columbia in the hospital, like Columbia University. So I actually did some private training with Joya, which was great for me because I'm trying to get more active on Instagram and YouTube and all that kind of stuff to get my voice out there. And because now, like, doctors, I feel like have to be on social media as well. And so I think Joya was really helpful to me because first of all, she helped me, like, I think as a physician, I don't really know like what the regular person wants to hear. And most of them don't want to hear like technical and like detailed stuff. And so Joya was very good at like, okay, these are the questions that you should prepare. And we did specific questions. And then she helped me formulate like the right answers that like people would want to hear. And then after that, I do a lot of ums and ahs and blah, blah, blah. And she was able to really like make it concise and short and succinct and informative. So I thought that was helpful. And then after that, I actually was able to, I got like some confidence. I got some, I did one TV interview, and then I did one live, which I did not know the difference of how different that was. And I think the live was so much scarier because it's actually live. And I feel like the way Joya taught me how to speak and how to be succinct and also like look into the camera. Otherwise you start like looking at, so I felt like all of that was really helpful for me. And yeah, and so now I'm a lot more active on social media. I do have my YouTube. So I feel like I feel a lot more confident and much more comfortable now.
And so Devanshi and Prema were talking about how to speak impromptu. So could you speak to what we worked on that got rid of, by the way, I did not put Sonali up to this.
Oh yeah, I wasn't even gonna I forgot, as you can tell, I'm cleaning my house and I was like, shit, it's 7 o'clock.
But what is it that we worked on that, like, because I teach this stuff, but what was it that helped you to kind of short circuit the nervousness when you're speaking impromptu, especially on live television?
Well, I think, I think first of all, you taught me that I'm the expert in the matter, which like he's like, even if like you think you don't know enough, like you know a lot more than anyone else does. So even if I think it's like something so dumb, like benefits of vitamin D, when I was saying it and I was just blabbering it out, you were like, okay, do you know that like 80% of the world would not know that? So I think just knowing that you are the expert on something made me a lot more comfortable. So whenever things would come out of my mouth, the main thing was just to say it with confidence.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was really helpful. And then I think
get rid of the filler words.
What?
We worked together on getting rid of the filler words, and that was something that Sashala is concerned with. So what is it that's working for you now with the filler words? They don't show up in your diction anymore.
So I pause a lot more. So I just pause and I don't like say, I'll just pause. And that's what I did on live TV. And it's kind of weird to pause and you're just kind of like, oh my God, is everyone staring at me? But it's actually much more, it makes you look a lot better, I feel, than the ums and the ahs. So I think that was very helpful.
Yeah.
And just saying it slowly, confidently, and then not being afraid to pause.
So Shala, thank you, Sonali. If the
Okay.
perfect solution were to come down, like a genie were to come down and give you the solution to what you are looking for, what would that look like?
It would look like perfect solution would be me not using any filler words and not requiring any practice. It would be second nature.
Okay. And Arti, what would the perfect solution look like for you? What would success look like for you?
I think leading the conversation with my employees. The perfect solution, I guess the perfect scenario is probably what I'm saying is, I'm using all the ums and the ahs. But just when I talk to them, I think I can be more of a guide to them, I think, than like trying to. The other thing is like the business is so new to us. So my background is actually in finance, and so the home health area is new to us, and so we're kind of learning on the go as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think I need to be probably reading more too,
Mm-hmm.
and just keep up to date with the things changing. With COVID, things are changing so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Yeah.
so being better prepared.
Yeah.
Before I go
And how
into
could you
these.
start to interview more people that are experts in your industry so that you could come across as an authority to your employees?
Yeah.
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 Prema, what would a perfect solution, if it were to come down, what would that look like for you?
I think being very articulate and specifying the most important things first. Like sometimes you're trying to convey a story, and then at the end of it, you realize you forgot 1 or 2 points. And then I think that to me would be important to kind of organize the thoughts. And a lot of times you don't have time to do that, but I wish it would come naturally to me.
Mm-hmm. And that's something that we'd work on in class. Devanshi, what would the perfect solution look like for you?
I think for me, it would be just being more assertive, just kind of everything just has, as Prema said, it should just come naturally, and you don't have to be like very prepared for it. You don't have to prep for it. It should just be something that, you're just very confident. I think it's the confidence, assertiveness, and ability to speak impromptu and convey my message even without practicing.
Right. And Sue, what would a perfect solution look like for you? You're pretty masterful at what you do, but what would the solution be? Oh, I think we've lost Sue to the headlines. Niti, what would be the perfect solution to you?
I think I really agree with Sushana. Not having to think about it, prepare in advance to speaking wherever you are. There are opportunities where you do have to speak without, so not getting the nerve and being a fluent impromptu speaker would be a great thing to have. And I mean, an example of a perfect solution is you, Joya. I absolutely am enamored by how you speak time.
One of the things that I love to share, and Sashala, since you're in front of crowds, and Arti, since you're in front of employees, is the Daniel Amen rule. Daniel Amen loves to talk about the 18-40-60 rule. At 18 years old, you thought that everybody was looking at you. At 40 years old, you didn't really give a damn about who was looking at you. And by 60 years old, you realize that nobody was really ever looking at you in the first place. Everybody is consumed with their own thoughts. So if you can flip the paradigm and really think about the fact that you want to leave Sashala, when you're standing in front of 100 people, you want to leave them better than they were when they first walked in the room. Your job is to now educate them. Devanshi, your job is to now educate them on how to put beautiful things on a shelf and make it look harmonious. Or Niti, how to pair a beautiful pair of chandeliers with something that's not as overwhelming, if that's going to be your statement piece for the evening. Or Sonali, when you're talking about common myths when it comes to sports medicine, you don't have to be a world-class athlete. Actually, the people that are the most common people that walk through the door are the ones that have been sitting at their desks all day. So how can you leave your audience better than they were when they walked in the room? Because by the way, the audience is usually just consumed with their own thoughts anyway. So it's your job to jolt them out of that by telling them a really compelling story, because that is the only thing that's going to engage all three brains.
Sorry, Jaya, I missed you earlier. I didn't realize I was speaking on mute. So your question was
The perfect solution if a
the
genie were to
perfect
come back
solution.
to you.
For me, like for us, it's like a collaboration, a mutual exchange of what the needs are and the services. I think I feel successful when I walk away, not only from the room, but from a project where both parties feel that we've achieved something and we've also helped each other out. I like the feeling of collaboration rather than like just, an exchange of service or an exchange of needs and requirement. I feel that way. I've been being able to establish relationships with my collaborators where not only I want to work with them, but they also constantly reach out and they want to work with me.
Super.
Yes.
So this is an opportunity. We have 15 minutes left. The public speaking masterclass is kicking off next week on Wednesday. And this is the last 15 minutes I've reserved for you to ask me any questions that you might have. And then I have a present for all of you at the end. Aarti, I'll pick on you first. What questions do you have?
Like, did it come to you naturally, being so confident and like the way you are? Or did it come with practice?
My confidence comes from my own personal story, which some of you know, is that for me, I knew from a very young age that I wanted to be a television anchor. And so I left my home at 18 years old and paid for college, paid for grad school, paid for every move around the country to come here and do what I wanted to do because my parents were not bought into my dream. So I didn't have any other choice but to be confident because I had to sell other people on championing my cause so I could get from point A to point B to point C and so on and so forth. I will tell you that I learned by doing, and that is what I'm a big fan of in the class, is because for me to learn business news, that had its own language that went with it, right? When you're talking about someone's earnings, you're talking about pro forma, you're talking about EBITDA, you're talking about year over year, all of those language I first had to learn. And then I needed to just be sent out onto the trading floor with no net, and I just needed to be able to talk. And so having to do that every single hour really trained me to become somebody who can get in front of any room now and talk ad nauseum, because I just have been trained to be able to, camera turns on, you just got to be able to talk. And you've got to be able to analyze very quickly with charts and things around you what the markets are doing, and then be out by commercial break. So for me, I'm taking that ethos and bringing that into the class, so that you're going to learn by doing.
Learn by doing, yeah.
Sashala, what is a question that you have for the class?
The question that I do have for the class, and this just kind of piggybacks on all of the other, I guess, recommendations or what others were saying just in regards to like impromptu speaking. And, for example, I believe it was probably Sonali Pai that brought this up, right? Especially being asked a question about something and not feeling very confident about your response, especially if you're not knowledgeable in that area, such as what is a good way to even respond, right? A lot of times I do, let me get back to you on that. I will, send you an email or send me an email so that we can speak more in depth about that. But reality is that, how is that being perceived, right? If you're supposed to be the expert in speak up there to other people and you're like, let me get back to you. How is that really perceived? Like, what does the audience really think?
You are well within your rights to not know, right? Sonali, you've been on TV a bunch of times. I'm sure there have been times when someone's asked you a question. What you don't want to do is that everything's Googleable right now. You don't want someone to go and say, well, what you said was completely wrong. You're well within your rights to say, you know what? I don't want to misspeak. I would like to research that and get back to you. Please email me at info@ladydrinks.com. In fact, I was coaching somebody today who's doing a radio interview tomorrow. And she's like, my biggest fear is that someone's going to ask me a question and I don't know the answer. I'm like, you are well within your rights to say, I don't want to misspeak. I'd like to get back to you on that after I've researched my answer thoroughly. Please email me at X. But I think sometimes, again, it's about having these pieces of language tucked away that you can deploy in real time rather than letting the nerves get the best of you.
Got it.
Okay.
Prema, what is a question that you have about the class?
I think there's several facets to it, but I liked what you said, that you had a dream and you followed it. That's your story, right? But I feel like mine is I never had a dream, and I had to find a dream because of the circumstances I was in. So my thought process is, why would people want to listen to that, right? If I have to tell a personal story or bring that in somehow, I kind of shy away from giving my story or why I am where I am today, because I feel like, why would they be interested in my story? So maybe it goes back to some amount of self-worth, or maybe what I did before was not worthy enough. So I constantly struggle, and I have to keep myself in check on those type of issues. So I think that is something that I would be looking for.
So I had a general manager at my first station, which was in Casper, Wyoming, population 50,000. And he said to me, Matt's come back and he's making a lot of noise. I apologize. So he said to me, Joya, stop trying to be the television anchor you think you're supposed to be, and just be you. You're the most unique thing you bring to the table. He's like, so stop trying to be your version of what you think in your head is what a TV anchor should act. And so there are no new stories. There are just new ways to tell them. And so when you think about your story, there are no new stories. What you're telling, I'm sure other people in this room have been in a moment where they're like, I fell into this. This is really not what I wanted to do. There are other people that feel that way too. But the more authentic you can be, when we're talking about buy-in, Aarti and Sonali, the more authentic you can be in saying, I don't know, is when you're going to get more empathy from your audience. And you can list people to help you. But I think, again, goes back to establishing that common ground with people and breaking through that ice wall of like, I'm this perfect person and I'm going to carry that persona through this entire talk. When in fact, you may not be that person. You actually feel a little bit insecure about the fact that this is not your dream. And yet here you are, an immigration attorney. Devanshi, what is your question about the class?
I wanted to know, so how long is the class, and what is the, how many sessions is it? And
so the class starts on January 13th. It's every Wednesday from 5:30 to 7, because ideally there's 7 students in the class. And by the time everybody presents, it takes us through to 90 minutes, but they fly. And I'm sorry, what was the second half of your question?
And how long is it? How many sessions is it?
It's 6 sessions.
6 sessions. All right.
So because I feel like I've done this enough, both privately and in master classes, that by 6 sessions, people generally get the concept. Sometimes by like the 3rd or 4th, I'm like, oh my God, no one's getting it. But by 6, there's something about that magic number, people get it.
And each session is a different, you touch on a different topic, or?
So each session follows the same format where I'll have a speaker at the beginning, and they're usually addressing some aspect of public speaking, body language, apparel, what to wear, how to have hard conversations, your video equipment, what should you use, a DSLR, or what can you use with your phone? So I have a speaker each week, and then we get right into the activity. So if I said to you, your prompt this week is coffee, Devanshi, why don't you go first? Why don't you tell us your story about coffee with the beginning, middle, and end? And after you present, everybody in the room goes around and gives you feedback. Devanshi, I really liked this, but I didn't get your takeaway. Like, I don't understand what that was. And then at the end, I asked you to rate between 1 and 5. How do you feel about your comfort level with public speaking? 5 being very comfortable, 1 being not comfortable. And the goal is that each week you're going to be moving up on that scale.
All right, thank you.
Sonali, what question do you have about the class? Sonali Pai, not Sonali Kannalal.
Yeah, the structure definitely, I think bringing in speakers. Of course, I think that the networking opportunity here is great, but one question that I have, that I always feel that if I don't feel like that the audience is engaged, I start to kind of shut down. So how can you gauge that the other person, besides just nodding, which you get a lot of, but how can you gauge that they get it and get you and are following the storytelling?
I'm going to teach you how to read the room. People are usually giving you 77 times more information with their body language. Like Devanshi right now is sitting like this. Like she's giving me more with her body language than she is with her diction, right? Not to pick on you, but I was just saying, like, you know, I might be losing her. She might be getting a little bit bored with what I'm sharing. So I'm constantly reading the room, and I'm going to teach you how to do that as well. Because your audience is giving you feedback if you're not engaging them, and it's up to you to jolt them out of that.
Exactly.
Sue, what is your question about the class?
So one thing I think I can grow and develop on is emotional intelligence, because if you have a high EQ, you can kind of quickly understand what the audience or the other person is thinking and speak to that. So that's a place where I feel I can grow more. Does your class have the scope on teaching the attendees and how to build up on EQ or emotional intelligence?
Going back to what Sonali is saying, I'm going to teach you how to start to read the room. Like even in this modality, I'm always scanning the room. I see that Arti's, you know, kind of sitting back a little bit, Prema sitting forward a little bit. Sashala has maintained eye contact the entire time. Devanshi is looking a little, you know, like, you know, it's 7 o'clock, you know, people are kind of winding down for the day. I am constantly monitoring to see who's engaged and who's not, and I'm going to teach you to do the same thing. And part of that is emotional intelligence, right? You understand when somebody's not engaged. I just got off a call earlier today where this person, was she nuts? Did she think that she could not see that she was on her phone the entire time I was talking to her? And I just stopped talking. I just literally stopped talking until she looked up, you know, but I'm painfully aware that this person is not paying attention. Nithi, what is your question about the class?
So Joya, this cohort, you did say that the classes are on Wednesday. Does that change for the following cohorts, or is it always Wednesday?
I've always kept it on a Wednesday.
On a Wednesday and the same time?
This last cohort I did on a Thursday because I looked 6 weeks out and I knew I was bumping up against holidays. So I did move it to a Thursday, but we're going back to Wednesdays because I feel like if I let it go too far into the week, people wait to the very last minute to do their assignment, and then it's not a great assignment. Like they're not prepared for the class because they waited till Thursday. But I feel like Wednesday people were more prepared and came to the class with more intention.
Right. And what is the time commitment in terms of the work you have to do after the class, you know, through the week?
Well, I ask you to prepare a 2 to 3 minute talk, because the only way you're going to learn is by practicing. So let's say, for example, your prompt tomorrow is umbrella. I want you to tell me a story about umbrellas. I would need you to come back and have a story to tell the entire audience about umbrellas. What are you promising?
Oh, wow.
What are you promising that I'm going to learn about umbrellas? What is your personal story about umbrellas? And what are you going to leave the audience that's new information about umbrellas that we didn't know before?
Okay.
Sonali, what is your question about the class? Oh, sorry, Sonali Kannalal, not Sonali Pai.
Oh, I mean, I really don't have many questions because I did the class with you. I guess one of the questions was that if we took this class and the topics are more, I guess, generic, like umbrellas or coffee or whatever, how do we know how to apply them to stuff that's important to us?
So what I'm really teaching you is the framework, right? Like I want you to get into the practice of promising me something, telling me a story about it, and leaving me with a gift. And so that framework, I mean, I won't just have it be banal things. I change up the prompt each week. But the point is that I want you to be able to use that no matter what situation you're in and what vertical you're talking about. Is that you can immediately say, okay, I know how to do this talk because I'm going to promise you something. I'm going to tell you a story about it, and I'm going to leave you with a gift.
Got it.
And so that's what you're going to be practicing. And it's really irrespective of what the prompt actually is.
So you said leave you with a gift? Is that like a knowledge gift?
A knowledge gift.
Got it. Okay.
So one of my favorite talks, and I realize we're coming up on 8 o'clock, is Steve Jobs' commencement speech that he gave at Stanford in 2005. And the first story that he talks about is the fact that he was adopted. And his mother, when she gave him up, said that I am very clear that I want my son to go to college. So he's giving this speech in front of however many thousands of students. And he's like, I want you to know that I never actually went to college, and here's why. He saw that his parents, adoptive parents, were working really, really hard. They were burning through all their money, and he was like, screw it, I'm not doing this. And he dropped out. But he continued to audit classes. And one of the classes that he audited was a calligraphy class. And he was like, when am I ever going to use a calligraphy class in my whole life? He finishes that story by saying, now, when you use any Microsoft product, do you notice the suite of fonts that are available to you anytime you use Microsoft Word? That was because I took that calligraphy class. He's like, so live your life, experience life. It has a way of connecting the dots. So that was the gift that he left you with. But that wasn't what he promised you at the outset. At the outset, he was basically painting the picture of somebody who dropped out of college. That make sense?
Yep.
All right, ladies, we're at 8 o'clock. I promised you a gift. If you register for the class today, I'm going to give you a coupon code for $500 off. So this is the link to register, and this is the coupon code to enter. And if you would like to be in the class, I think one of the surprising byproducts from having taught this now a couple of times is the community that develops over the last 6 weeks, and people are sad to kind of break ranks after that. Because most people don't feel like they're seen in their day-to-day workplace, but everybody is very, very, very supportive of each other and very complimentary of you and presenting whatever you're doing. So if that is of interest to you, that community is of interest to you, getting better, and your self-development is interest to you, I would love to see you next week on Wednesday. I put the link in the chat function. Can everybody see it? Yes, no, maybe?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. So I look forward to seeing some of you in that class. You get $500 off if you register today. Bye, everyone.
Thank you,
Bye.
Joya.
Thank
you.
Good night, everyone. Thank you, Joy.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.